hope we can take a seat and start the program. Okay, right? Thank you. Well, I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this second edition of GOAT Talks. GOAT stands for Greatest of All Times. But for us here, it stands for the group of all-round talent of the clubmates. Big hand. As we sat down to discuss the burning issues of the day, like generative AI, we thought of how the world needs exceptional leadership at this inflection point for humankind. This is why we have four stalwarts of our time as our speakers today, to enlighten us with their wisdom and experience. Let me now introduce our four speakers to you all. Mr. Pawan Goenka, Chairman in Space, former MD, Mahindra Group.
Welcome, sir. Mr. Goenka was the MD and CEO of Mahindra & Mahindra and is currently chairperson of the Indian National Space Promotion Authorization Center in Space, the regulator for private players in space. An IIT Kanpur alumnus, Mr. Goenka is now chairman of the board of IIT Madras. He has a PhD from Cornell and is on the board of Sun Pharmaceuticals and Bosch Limited. Mr. Prakash Jain, Chairman Inspira, former Chairman BT India. Mr. Jain is the founder and executive chairman of the cybersecurity and analytics firm Inspira Enterprise India Limited. He is also on the board of Jain International Trade Organization, Porval Jain Foundation, and GITO Administrative Training Foundation. He studied at New York University, Tandon School of Engineering for his master's. Welcome, sir. We have Mr. K Venkataramanan, former MD of Larsen & Toubro, the India's premier infrastructure developer, and he also served on the L&T board. Mr. Venkataramanan, in his 4 decades of experience at L&T, has spearheaded the company's foray in the world of E&C, strengthened every aspect of EPC value chain, and transformed L&T to one of the respected names in the global EPC fraternity. He studied at IIT Delhi and is a sports lover, I'm told. And we have Mr. Sandeep Batra. He's executive director on the board of ICICI Bank and is responsible for its corporate center. He's responsible for the credit, corporate communications, data science, finance, HR, legal operations, and customer service. He also has the risk function, internal audit, and compliance groups. He serves on the board of ICICI Prudential Life Insurance, ICICI Lombard General Insurance, ICICI Prudential Asset Management Company, and he has been with ICICI since 2000, many years. He is a CA and company secretary by qualification. Welcome, sir. So that's where we are. We have introduced you to the members, the speakers today. I'm quickly going to introduce you to the GOAT committee, who's organized the event today, Mr. Anil Dang. Sir, if you can stand up and show us. He's run away. Yeah, there he is, self-effacing, sitting at the back, waving at us. Captain Ravinder Bakshi. There he is, Mr. Bakshi. We were just calling out to you, your name, sir. Mr. Lalit Vashishta. There he is. Mr. Nakul Ruparel. There he is. And me, I'm your host, Vineeta Dwivedi. Thank you. The leader of this endeavor and the one who brings all these eminent speakers here today is Mr. R Suresh. I invite him now to talk a bit about GOAT and about today's topic and speakers. He also conceived the idea of GOAT to foster peer learning and celebrate each other here at the club. Mr. R Suresh.
Good evening, friends. Thank you very much, Vineeta, for the introductions and setting the evening motion in place. It's really a fabulous day, fabulous evening, and we can't get bigger, better, brighter than what we have today out here. Isn't it? Great audience. First of all, great audience. Each one specialized, highly, highly accomplished people, and the lineup of the speakers. Just a stat for the statistical minded. Between the four of them, they have managed companies worth more than 100 billion US dollar. Okay, for starters. For starters. And one of them, all the four tall people, one of them is figuratively and literally tall as well. No prizes for guessing who that is. He managed, give or take, I think close to 2 lakh crore of revenue, give or take. And Dr. Pawan Goenka, Mr. Pawan Goenka, Dr. Pawan Goenka, managed, give or take, 1 lakh crore. I mean, this is like mind-boggling numbers. Sandeep Batra, asset base of the bank he manages the corporate center of, 250 billion US dollar. Yeah, billion US dollar. I don't know how many, 13, 14 zeros after 250, yeah. And Prakash Jain, if you hear this, maybe you'll fall off the chair. He provides fail-proof cybersecurity for all the retail, corporate, institutional, banking and finance and payment transactions for the country, by probably the leader. Some million transactions the company processes per second. Per second. Now, you know, somebody asked me, I don't remember exactly, but since the question was in the tennis court, so I don't remember that at all. They asked you, what is the common thread between bringing all these four together for an evening, other than the fact they're all tall people? This is the common thread, the scale, the complexity. How can they manage this gargantuan action portfolio in their lives and still stay calm? I mean, I've had personally the pleasure of working with them, not just being friendly, working with them. And there's so much takeaway. I thought the larger group should know certain insights and inner construct of how they do what they do, or how did they do what they do, or what they did, right? So these kind of things were always in my mind. Hence the GOAT was constructed. So the construct of GOAT is based on the fact that the general camaraderie we have leads us to knowing people personally, and probably we know what the recreational pasture of each one of us is. I can make out who plays squash and who plays tennis and who's a gymmer, who's this, who's that. But on the professional side, we don't focus at all. So, you know, so professionally, we need to know them more. So we have this forum called GOAT. So GOAT is nothing but a kind of a twin or a duality. One is its greatest of all times because it's a sports acronym borrowed in various walks of life. Let it be there. GOAT is the greatest of all times. It suits well for some of the people that we are blessed to have alongside us. And GOAT also is a group. The group activity is emphasized. And another emphasis I need to provide here is, it is peer group. It's not hierarchical. There's nothing called, you know, once you are hierarchical, which is what our corporate functioning is, the learning from the others stops, the impressing starts. So we want to dismantle that. We are a peer architecture. So anyone can put the hand on the back of the other and ask for it, and including all the four people who are speakers today, they're all members of the club. So we are in the peer environment, so it's a very free-flowing, hopefully, two-way environment. So that's the concept of GOAT. And last few minutes, so I've introduced them to you. Now I want to introduce you to them. A couple of them are frequenters to the club, so they obviously know. Some of them don't come as often. So you need to know the group is a very energetic, highly, highly accomplished, the right word is eclectic group. We have solved most of the problems in the world. Yeah, the latest we've solved is, I think, the The Ukrainian-Russian war is solved this morning. This morning, yeah. And some people have solved the Tamil Nadu governor's ooster of the minister. And there is everything we have solved. We even drafted the right speech for the Prime Minister in the White House. So this group can't get, can't get to the bottom, can get to the bottom of anything. So that's the cricket. There's one lone consultant who talks a little bit about cricket, so forget him. So without much ado, we would now hand over the forum to these four people. And this is the first time we had a puzzle to solve. We didn't know who to start with. So we didn't know that because all four are just about, great people to hear first. Or it's not that when you speak last, you're not so great, but it was a puzzle. So we said, we'll draw the lot, and we have the lot here, and we're calling the youngest person in the chamber today, Dr. Falguni Shah. She's always young because she's a dermatologist. So she comes and picks up the lot. And before that, there's this one question we need to ask. Does she pick one now, and after the first speaker does another one, or all the four now? All four? All three. Okay. Okay, Doc, go ahead. Dr. Pawan Goenka. This is excellent order. So we'll start with Prakash. It's my pleasure to invite you here.
Great to be the first goat here. Good evening. Good evening to all of you. Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, all of you. Great to be with you. And thanks, Suresh, and your GOAT Forum. Let me share my little journey. Nothing exciting, but I went through three trajectories or three changes, transformational, where I learned a lot. And I think that shaped my life. It's a career-wise 50 years long journey. I was born in Rajasthan, very poor family. Till 4th grade, I used to travel by walking 2 miles. The schools weren't there. Then my father moved here, and being from Marwad, I ended up in a Marwadi school. Okay. Chira Bazaar, Hindi medium. Did schooling there. As you know, that school run by all UP teachers, so is as good as being in Rai Bareli. For namesake, it was in Mumbai, right? Hindi medium, and I'm talking about 1969, you had such a disadvantage that you got to think Hindi and talk English. And the compiler wasn't available. And certainly not ChatGPT. But what changed course of mine is that I got the admission at VJTI, Victoria Jubilee, what is now, strangely they can retain the same initial, but it's a Vijibai, Jijibai, whatever that, yeah? So there's only 4 you could do, metallurgy, electrical, civil, mechanical, metallurgy. And my father had a business of power looms, and I hated textile, so I hated mechanics. I wanted to be in electronic and telecom, and the only place I could get was Pune. So against all the challenges from family, I still moved to Pune, lived in a hostel, and that 4 years of undergraduate transformed my life because I became like a free bird. I created a lot of social capital. Is a new word used. Is that Dale Carnegie books you must have read about 90 years back, How to Make Friends and Influence People. And today that book is, you could probably rephrase the book as like a social capital building, right? And that's because I was away from the family, so I was able to build a tremendous social capital. Okay, because my father was not there, no parents. So you could start off with the Peter Scotch parties. I mean, whatever shoestring budget you have, right? Okay, and that changed, and I decided that whenever I graduate, I'm going to go to US. So I applied for US, I got an admission at NYU. So 1973, I left India after being electronic, and that was the best title I could get, BE in electronic and telecommunication. Impossible to get like a double degree, you know. But anyway, I mean, what they taught was nothing big deal. The only telecom that I learned was a Strowger, you know, which is thrown away later, I guess. But anyhow, so I landed at NYU. I did MS, worked with DEC, and those were the days IBM was incumbent. So being in computer science, I got a job in IBM. I worked for a few years. Then mini computer was the happening place because, you know, in this world, you hate incumbent, right? No matter how good they are. I mean, you like Windows, but you hate Windows. You know, like incumbency is not something you want alternate. Anyway, I work with digital. Another great thing that happened to me is that I ended up in Xerox. And the reason I joined, so I spent 10 years in New York, 10 years in California. And Xerox, because they had a patent protection for 18 years, xerographic. So they were making a lot of money hand over fist. And because of the money, they thought they could challenge IBM, the incumbents. So they acquired a lot of companies. So Xerox was like, if I go back and tell you that they were the real pioneers in building the new technology. Mouse was Xerox first, mouse that we use. Word processor, Xerox first. Winchester disk drive, the storage media, was Xerox first. Floppy disk drive, Xerox first. Daisy wheel printer. Till then, you had this, what you call, Selectric, that IBM ball, right? Moving around, printing. Daisy wheel printer, Xerox first. Okay, so every technology they had first. X.25, packet switching protocol, Xerox first. Ethernet, Xerox first. But being first in technology doesn't mean you made the most money. They never made the money out of it because the big bosses were copier mindset. So every time a proposal goes, they reject it, okay? But it was a great learning from me from technological standpoint, okay? And the one thing I learned in life was that the Peter Drucker's 4 Ps theory, that we all call marketing or whatever, product, price, place, and promotion, okay? It is not relevance. I mean, Google has only 1 P, product. There's no price to Google, right? Huh? And when you look at Apple, who would have thought that you spend like 1 lakh rupees for a phone? I mean, you go back to that, but people do. Because it has not a phone alone. It has combined into your Walkman, your, what do you call it? Yeah, I mean, you name it. Everything converge into one, okay? So necessarily not 4 Ps are essential. You can have one superlative P and that probably will pull you through. Okay, so that's another learning through this thing. Then in 93, I came back to India. I started the first company was a BPO. I sold it in 99. Then 99, you know, once you sell the company, you become jobless, right, Suresh? You have gone through it. So that's the time I took whatever money we made out of the first company sell, took a license for international and national long distance carrier in India. And that's the time India's IT export, which was about $10 billion. Today is about $270 billion, okay, IT export out of India. And so we got into the business of virtualization because every IT company at that point had a in-house telco company. And what they used to do is like, suppose TCS get a contract from Citibank to say, I outsource 30,000 headcount to you, or for that matter, Tech Mahindra, where you were earlier associated. So those 30,000 headcounts should appear virtualized to Citibank co-location sites globally. So it's building like a big fat pipes connecting desktop to desktop. And so we started that, and then we started saying that, okay, we'll give you 99.9 availability, or 4 nines, or 5 nines, depend how much money you want to spend. So it's building redundancies around everything, build. So I helped migrate all the India's bank SWIFT from ISD to MPLS, automated. We did all the IT exports were my clients. So 2007-8, British Telecom came in, and they say it's a great business because there is a stickiness. It takes about 6 to 9 months to build it out, and it's a 5-year contract. If Citibank gives a contract to TCS, it's a 5-year usually life cycle, 5, 6, 7 years. So it sticks around. Then it takes about a year to yank out and move it, right? So nobody does it, so long as you're in the right price band. So they liked the model, and they started X, and I was offered 3X, so I sold it. So 2010, 11, we started then Inspira. So it's like they say, you cannot make a souffle rise out of the same recipe twice, right? So the other model we created out of this was because we knew the cloud was happening. So we got into the cloud migration, and because of the cloud came the security and the analytics. Because unless you have big data analytics, you cannot really support or analyze the data. I give you one example, like autonomous car today generates about 1 terabyte of data every day. Okay, because it is as good as like a 4 Suresh driving the car, north, south, east, west, and probably the middle direction as well, and coordination in between, the number of sensors it has, honestly, because data dumps that coming, So, most complex project will be managed like 1.5 million events per second happening. So today we operate cyber security center from Manila. We have in India too. We have in UAE one and Dallas. So it's like follow the sun or around the clock across the global client. So, but building these 3 companies, what it taught me is what I call 4H. First H for humility, okay, which is like empathy or connecting with your team and carrying them across. Second H for honesty, honesty yourself, honesty of people. Integrity derives out of the same thing. Third H that I always emphasize to my people is hunger. You got to be hungry. If you're not hungry, you're not going to wake up next day early enough. And fourth H is the hard work, which goes without saying. And obviously the fifth comes automatically after these 4 H is happiness. Happy customers, happy employees, happy everybody, and the family as well, right? So, these are some very brief. I'm not a great, what I call it, but I achieved it, whatever, little bit of these things I learned along the way in building the business. And thank you for hearing me out. I have one thing to share with you, and that's my passion and hobby that I have. I'm good at photography, by the way, but okay. Good, reasonably good, let's put it that way, okay. Nothing like Raghu Raman, or what is that? Who's a famous Indian photographer here? Huh? Raghu, okay. I'm nowhere in his class anyway. But, and, क्या बोले? अरे बाप रे, अरे वो रह गया. चलो, second one I like the most is, I wouldn't use the word adventures, but far off places, holidays, discovering, like from going for gamings into like Africa. And that's another reason why I have a small, what do you call it? I'm an honorary consul of Rwanda in India. Yeah. And there's a strange way, please don't quote it and don't record it. 2006 it happened because, don't record please, it's not correct, so.
It's a privilege to be here to speak to you all. Thank you, Suresh. It's always a pleasure having seen you on the tennis court with your two kids when I was active in tennis, and your team for inviting me. We have been members of the club right from its inception, and really treasure the amount of time and we have spent here, and both our daughters also enjoyed it. Both our daughters got married here also, in the Colonial Hall and the lawn there. So thank you very much for getting us here. I thought I'll just share a few thoughts of my very satisfying journey when I joined a very small company called LIT, and really traveled through it along with many others to make it or be a part of it when it became a very large, internationally known, iconic company. Born in Bangalore, did my entire schooling in Hyderabad, and joined IIT Delhi for chemical engineering straight from college at the campus when they came for interviews. Our passion, those days, was not management, it was engineering and design. So my passion was design and engineering, and I listened to my heart and intuition, which I've always done, even after that, and joined L&T when I had a much better salary offer from Union Carbide, and also a scholarship in the University of Manchester to do my PhD. That was, of course, was to be joined in September, but I joined L&T in June. Looking back, my experience has been that finally it is your choices that construct your career and life, along with hard work. But it's your choices along with hard work that construct your career and life. The culture, even at that time in L&T, when it was very small, and where Mr. Hoklassen himself was very active at that time, what was, if these, and generally L&T recruited all toppers. Most of them were IITites, and a few others from VJTI and some of the other colleges. The concept was, given those times, that all our bosses used to tell us, and remember there were a lot of European bosses at that time, but even then, these Danish bosses used to tell us, if these equipment being imported can be designed and manufactured in Europe, why can't it be done by L&T? This was the sort of spirit we had. And Hoklassen himself used to say, if not L&T, who else? So I think this was a site of way we grew up, and the nationalistic sentiment, even though it was founded by two Danish gentlemen, but in India with Indian equity, was very nationalistic. And I think these are the sort of things that finally brought us the acronym and the culture, which enabled us that we make the things that make India proud. I mean, now I'm talking late 60s when all this was being, because I'm the oldest guy in this group, so I've had among the founding members, I was really a founder in many ways. I was the first batch of IIT Delhi. Again, we set up our labs. We did, those were the 5-year course. We did surveying. We did machine shop. We did study drawing. That's why I fitted well in L&T even though I was a chemical engineer. And best joke is I had to handle these strong Punjabi boys. And those days, IITs had a lot of boys from public schools, Columbus and Delhi, and La Martiniere from Calcutta, and you name it, Sherwood and Bishop Cotton, they all came with their own, And here was the poor little guy from Hyderabad, lone guy. I'd never even eaten a tandoor roti in my life. And anyway, it was great. But thanks to my games, I assimilated very fast, because all these guys who came from public schools used to say they know everything, all the games. Till we actually had the little bit of trials, and then they knew who had the games. These poor guys who came from Hoshiarpur and Punjab High Secondary and some other schools, they were the dadas. So finally, I think it was a great melting point. I learnt a lot being the first batch, and we had all English professors. Those days, every IIT set up by a different country, and we were British. So all our professors were English, and my Dr. Rumford, with whom I was very closely associated, he called me Shorty. So, so that was my nickname right through IIT, and a lot of my old friends, they still call me Shorty, and I'm okay with that. And the best jokers in L&T, Mr. Hoklassen nicknamed me Tiny. So, so I think this is something in their gene, you know, to have this. So I was sent abroad twice to America and also to Europe for extended training of collaborators, and was the founder member of product engineering and then R&D. That time a lot of, the L&T was in that thing of assimilating all the collaborations. In 1983, I got an opportunity to come out of R&D into the mainstream in production, where I spent my first year as a production manager. And Mr. Nayak at that time was our joint general manager, manufacturing. And the special fabrication shops handled nuclear reactors and space. Those are the two. We got into space rocket motor casings way back in 1969, 68. Abdul Kalamji used to come to our shops with us to carry the fixtures himself. And so it was a great feeling. It was part of the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program, IGMPD. And that's how we made the SLVs, we made the ASLVs, we made the PSLVs, now we're making the GSLVs. So it was a great, from an engineering point of view, it was a treasure, although all my checks used to bounce. Because my wife came from Bangalore and I couldn't show her the type of thing. I stay somewhere. So I took a nice little flat in Jew scheme next to Ramanand Sagar, next to Dharmendra. I had the same Dobie and milkman as Dharmendra, but not the salary. So the checks used to bounce, and the cash. Pardon? Hema Malini that time was. By the way, did you mention Hema Malini? When I studied in IIT Delhi, Hema Malini was studying in the Madrasi school. And she was about 3-4 years junior. But the prettiest girl in that time was not her in that school. She was the daughter of an IPS officer, you know. And her name was her name was also Malini Krishnaswamy. So a lot of kids used to come from the Madrasi school, who were also very good, intelligent school, what is called South Indian Education Trust. Sorry. So anyway, that was a part of those days. So I was asked to also not only be the production manager, but also set up the new fabrication shops and offshore platform yard that we had planned in Hajira. And I was reporting to Mr. Nayak. That started a long journey of more than 33 years together as we moved together in the company. And I think the 24/7 which NDTV says started for me from 1983. And it was any time, any call, any time. So this was a big issue in L&T at that time because the project was only 40 crores. But in 1983, 40 crores was big for L&T. And nobody had conceived that we said we're going to do platforms, we're going to take it in the sea, we're going to install it. It was too much for most of the senior management on the board. But this is what we wanted to do, and Mr. Nayak was driving it. And with a lot of difficulty, we convinced the board, and that is how we got into wanting to build Hajira. Now, it was to be inundated with water, the waterfront because of the tides, but that's where you need to be able to make huge platforms and put it onto the sea and then install it 100 kilometers away in 70 meters of water depth. Do also the construction there, fabrication here. It was a different ball game, let's put it, and no Indian company was doing that. But simultaneous to that, we also, the factory was going to take 3 years to build, we also had to recruit workmen from various ITIs in Gujarat. That's where I learned that Surat, nobody wants to work. They all, they had that saying that you eat in Gujarat and you die in Kashi. Jamanu, Gujarat, Surat mein, or Marwanu. So that's when I really realized the real hard-working labor for Gujarat comes from Mehsana, comes from Saurashtra. Their names are like Panchal. They are not Shahs and Desais. They have to be, Panchals and different other names. So anyway, it was fascinating that while we were doing this construction, simultaneously we hired a shop in Udna, and we started the training. And that was one of the strengths we had at L&T, this apprentice training of workmen from 12th, after they pass out 12th. So the shops were quite ready in 1986, but now came the issue. Our marketing division said, "Arey yaar, you're talking of all these products, we are not comfortable to market it." So we took on the responsibility ourselves at Powai and took the challenge. We set up a small young group. Of course, in L&T standards, we were young. I was just about 40, and these guys were all 30s and 28s. And we called it Special Projects and Systems. And our mandate was bring into L&T that which we don't do today. I mean, there was a clear mandate because the marketing division wouldn't allow us to step on their toes. They said, "You built the factory, do it." I mean, these are some of the, I would say, hallmarks of Mr. Nayak also. He didn't get scared of those guys. Because that time the L&T was a different L&T. The marketing used to sit in the L&T house, and we, the Mazdurs, used to sit in Powai, the manufacturing group. So anyway, they said, "You can't do marketing anyway." Because those days the concept was, marketing people are different, special breed. You are not marketing. "Arey, aap jara aapka sab wo karo, hum order leke aayenge." Anyway, this was the style of those days. I mean, not only in L&T, I'm sure it must have been elsewhere. But this interdisciplinary strength of all of us put together, all young people, in a very short time, of course with a lot of luck I would say, we incubated 3 major businesses for L&T. Defense, offshore oil and gas and onshore, and power. And not only did we incubate it, we also booked orders. And some of the highlights were, for example, in defense, we entered with the ATV vessel, which was a very secret project of those days, Advanced Technological Vehicle, where we all had to sign secrecy agreements. Even our bosses beyond who were directly involved knew about what it is. And that was a nuclear submarine. We started with that. Now we have made 3 of them. Then the next important thing was offshore platforms. Till then, it was a license Raj in India. Koreans were doing it. Mazagon Dock and Hindustan Shipyard were supposed to do it, but they never did it on time. So we made the big platforms right on the first time. 4 of them had to finally go in one vessel, 1,400 tons in one barge. And Hajira is not the best of water depths. It's the tide, in, all of you know, Gujarat know, in Bhavnagar, Surat and all, the tide comes from 3 meters to 7 meters. So you have to choose from the tidal tables the right time, and then it's a sinusoidal curve. So you must catch it and load it with ballasting on the barge. There's a lot of calculations. You have to move this 1,000-ton on multi-axle platform trailers. I mean, I can't show you a movie, but it's fabulous. Imagine that whole thing moving. Where we call the movie, we call it When Mountains Move. Now, the tide was at 2:30, and being our first job, we wanted to be very, very careful. Now, first time we are doing it, so Mr. Desai, his wife, all the directors, their wives, all came. So they said, "Hey, KV, what 2:30? Please have it at 5:30 or 6, otherwise we can't come." Now, how to explain to him that it's not possible? So, so using my little senior, 2:30 in the morning, I'm saying. So using my senior Cambridge and whatever I learnt of Shakespeare, I said, "Sir, simple terms, tide and time wait for no man." Okay, they're all sporting people. They took it, all a little cursing, but when they finally saw the loadout and the scale and what it was, and at 2:30 in the morning, it was sort of, awesome. Now came, as I've said, I don't know, maybe it just happens when you work hard, but many times when you work very hard, God comes at some important points of time and helps you. The liberalization of the Indian economy in the 90s Well, India was sleeping in the 80s, and we invested 40 crores. And that 40 crores will be worth 700, 800 crores now. Gave us an opportunity to dream big. In fact, the real growth of L&T started from 92, 93 in a new way. Of course, it grew much more, as I'll tell you later. And we had a dream that we wanted to be an integrated, world-class and scale engineering and construction company. We were the Western group, and we had the pure construction group in Chennai. So that was there, we were here. So our focus was defense, hydrocarbon, and power, and heavy equipment. But we needed an accepted band and expertise to tackle the Saipams and the Bechtels and the various giants in doing this type of work. And this is where we did really some good intelligent planning. We realized that if you want to be big, you have to have good engineering. Till that time, most of the other many companies were trying to move from construction and fabrication. We said we'll move from engineering downwards, although we had some construction and we had a fair amount of fabrication. So we scouted around and then identified and made two joint ventures, one with Chiyoda of Japan for hydrocarbon and one with Sargent Lund, USA for power. For them, it was a little low-cost engineering center. For us, it was to build our own capability and have a basis for qualification. Then, once we did this, another major inflection point in our group was, as luck could have it at that time, one thing I don't know, maybe all of you may remember, that India was one of the earliest countries in the Middle East and Far East to insist on Euro 4 standards for our diesel. So the projects came called diesel dehydrosulfurization projects, mandated by the Supreme Court, and everybody listened. That means there was severe penalties on Indian Oil and others if you don't do it. And everybody thought, therefore, we must go for turnkey. Otherwise, generally, these people like to do piecemeal. They'll buy equipment separately, do construction separately. And at luck would have, we had just about built all these infrastructure. We had to do a lot of marketing. But now people realize LIT that Mazdoors also can do marketing. So we have got recognized, and with these engineering centers, we quoted. And we got the bulk of the orders, beating the Koreans, beating the Italians, beating the Japanese. We worked on almost 15 projects at the same time. We had so much work that we had to also outsource engineering to others. And conceptually we said, Poa is the mother, but it's too expensive a place in the long term to add too much of things. Hajira is our muscle. We chose Vadodara as the brain. That's where we today have a huge knowledge city. And with this, we had the golden triangle of our E&C business for power and hydrocarbon and for heavy engineering fabrication. So this was one turning point. Then we got let us say, one more not brain, but let's say aspiration. He said, if we can do so well here and beat the Koreans and others here, why can't we go and do it in Middle East and Southeast Asia? But we didn't have track record there. We didn't have the scale. And whatever it is, as somebody told me when I first time went there, KV, we know you are good equipment suppliers, but your engineers from India, you're good engineers. You're good supporting staff. But we are not comfortable to give you a whole project to manage of a $500 to $1 billion and manage multinational. Not yet. Our top management are quite worried. So we took a next step. We nuanced our strategy where we went under these big guys and supplied them our construction and supply of equipment. Because we had all these elements. Most people didn't have it. The typical EPC players do engineering and they do some parts of, they don't really have the equipment. So this is the way we got in there. And once we got in, we were able to quote. And again, we were bold. Soon as we got in, what we talk Atmanirbhar also is there. And they also wanted what they call in-kingdom value. So we built a huge facility at Sohar in Oman, which is where the Rotterdam Port Authorities with the Oman government were building a big complex of port, big factories. And what attracted them to us was that we could also build skill. And only two countries in the world where a lot of people are ready to, the government wants them to work to get skill is Saudi Arabia and Oman. It's not Qatar and Kuwait, UAE, but the numbers are very small. So they gave us the facility built as far as the quay wall, dredging and so on, because next to the port, and we built the workshops and our equipment, and that was our USP, by which we just got our fair share of business from UAE and from Aramco. Aramco are the tough people to get, but once you get, they have $45 billion they spend every 2-3 years. And they have long-term agreements. So once they choose 4-5 people, they don't move around. They stick to those people. So this is something that we did, but then we realized we were all young relatively to all these Bechtels and all, they all had gray hair, and I used to have a tough time convincing the people, sir, you are still thinking of Rock Hudson, you are thinking of Kirk Douglas, you are thinking of all those guys, maybe Gregory Peck, but we are Tom Cruise. we are Brad Pitt, you know. We are the young lot. So we don't have that much of gray hair and experience, but we have the power, the will, the enthusiasm. And which other company you will find directors coming to project meetings? There that fellow will have a vice president title, but he will be way down in the thing. So I said, these are our USP. We come, we are close to you. And that's how we went out. But then we realized, now we have to build the foundations. And we set up our own project management institute in Vadodara. Because unfortunately in India, project management is not having a proper area in a curriculum of anything in the depth. Yes, when you go to IIM, you do some project electives, you go to NICMAR, you do something in construction. But as a total integrated project management, you don't have any such, even today we don't have. And they don't treat it as a science. Here it's treated still as some experience. So we built that. We got retired people from Bechtel and SIPEM and all to be our visiting lecturers. We had our own. We built, and as I said, as Mr. Batra said, one thing we had strength was in IT. Young people are good in that. These old rock artists were not so good in that. So we integrated our whole system, right from bidding to engineering to procurement to construction, using ERP. We were one of the earliest people to use this very unfriendly but good ERP of SAP, customized to our requirement. It took a lot of effort of ours. But anyway, the advantage is it was good for transaction part of it. And we built around it all our stuff. So that was the first thing we established, which was a stepping stone. Second thing we realized, many companies are going fat. Even the foreign companies who do large projects, many of them are shut shop. In India, as I don't want to mention names, but 2-3 who followed us also went down the side. So risk management is very, very important. Risk management, right from knowing whether you want to quote, then quote, and in each of these projects, they, if a $1 billion project, the hours to construct it in terms of pure engineering will be about 200,000 man-hours to even bid. You have to do at least 25,000, 30,000 hours because each project is different. So it's a lot of expense. So you can't bid every project. You have to be very, very selective and decide, okay, this is what I will go for because your success rate is never more than 20%. So basically, we became members of the Risk Management Institute in USA, which had all the leading contractors, and because of our enthusiasm, because of our presence, we also became the chairman of it for 2 years. So that was a great thing which helped us when we went to the Middle East. The third important thing is safety. Unfortunately, in India, we all know, right? All of us are very unsafe. And when you go abroad, boy, with all those goras who are in those foreign companies, even if they are Middle East, safety is the first place that they knock you off. So, and safety is also a very behavioral thing. It's not just protocols and things. So we had to get into this. So we employed DuPont safety systems. And then we established our own safety school, which we still have in Hajira, which is a showpiece, where we can do all this education and at the same time sensitize people as they come in. And that is a gate. If you don't have that good track record of millions of man hours without incidents. Forget about accidents. Even when the fellow gets cut, that will be treated as a... So we established that also. Having done that, the other important point, which we were none of us are so conversant with multinationals, how to treat them, speak them, So we had to develop soft skills. There we hit upon a good idea, which we learned from the Americans, of having what they call, right in the beginning, you have a team workshop. You get your top people, their top people for the project, 2-day workshop, off-site, get to know each other, plan that we'll do it together, make a nice photograph, put it on a table, so that they know that you and I are fighting for the same completion. And as you go along, you do it in steps. That means there are 3 or 4 workshops. It's also a way of building customer intimacy. But even after doing all this, as I said, it took a lot of effort for us to really succeed. But once we succeeded, we also succeeded in the Southeast Asia, in Thailand, Malaysia, Burma or Myanmar, parts of Africa like Tanzania. Somebody who said the Council of Tanzania. And therefore, in fast track, we built another huge complex at Kattupalli, right next to Ennore, where we also have our shipyard, where we do defense work, and we have the offshore yard. So basically, we booked a number of orders in this part of the world. So this is the one area we took bold risks. But then if you have the capability, you can take the risk. So it's very much like cricket. Right on the middle stump, Virat Kohli can click it for 4. Yes. But every top carry can't do that. So I know, finally, now coming more now to the board level, as a company at the board level, as a board level, is a transformation of a company. All of you must be having shares. You've seen how L&T, what it has done. So I was elected to the board in 1999, the same year that Mr. Nayak became our CEO and MD. And now started the turbocharge period in L&T. Literally turbocharged. I mean, I worked with many people, but I mean, he's something. And the next many years, we had a transformational period in L&T. And I think the first initiatives we took at the board and transmitted down the line, it took a lot of work, workouts with 150, 200 managers to convince them on some of the things we want to do. And at the same time, they had to again take it. So we took 2 years to sort of get a buy-in from everybody. So one of the first things we said, we'll revise our vision statement and L&T will be an Indian multinational. We'll benchmark with the best in the world. So all of us, we said, we may 8 in India, but 5 hai. Right now you're 5 in the world benchmark. So you have to realize that you go up like that, So we brought that humility in us that if you want to be there, then you have to be different. And what got us here will not get us there. Here we were the Amitabh Bachchan of India. But we have to do something there. So basically, the next one was, L&T over a period of time had become rather bureaucratic. Seniority was dominating more than merit. And so the next thing was, merit is going to be the prime objective. And to do that, it again took a lot of effort. The young people liked it, but the middle management and others, it took us some effort. And simultaneously, we said we have to be more entrepreneurial. We have to move in the entrepreneurial route. And Mr. Nayak had a very good statement. He said, KV, a very good manager can maintain value. Much better manager can incrementally increase value. But there's only an entrepreneurial, hard-working, devoted manager who can multiply value, So this is the sort of company we wanted to become. So we introduced the bell curve. Jack Welch introduced, very controversial, but we introduced it, where you identify over a period of 2-3 years who are your top performers. You also can identify who are your low performers. And with a lot of human heart, getting them placements, we started removing the people who are in the bottom 2% or so. At the same time, identifying the top 3%. And after good assessment of their work and in assessment centers, we have a beautiful management institute at Lonavala, and we have a 7-step development program. So Hayes and Mercer came in the early years to train us on assessment. These people got big bonuses, high variable pay, and we call them the MLPs, Management Leadership Program. They could move fast. Similarly, we had the TLPs, Technological Leadership Program. So in this way, we didn't change the values, but we changed the culture. From L&T, from being a very steady, gentlemanly company to a very more assertive, active, agile, street smart company. I mean, this is something that was done. The other important, I think, thing that was a game changer was way back in 1999, we gave ESOPs. You know, I told you my checks used to always bounce. Till I became a joint general manager, my checks used to bounce. So we gave ESOPs, and that covered a large number of our people. And it was also helped us to retain good people. And they could also see when they add value, we can keep looking at that. None of us were all engineers, never used to look at the Sensex those days. Now they started looking at the Sensex and the L&T share. So the other very important thing was that now the L&T that you'll see 10 years from now will be a more new technology company. So we decided that we have to shed some of our legacy businesses and build our IT, technology services, and other new areas. And that is how we sold our switchgear, which was one of our top businesses. When I joined L&T was more known for switchgear. But that money we invested in Mindtree. And going forward, the verticals that will be very important, we thought, which we are in, we must grow up the scale. And that's why we decided we'll only do very large projects in our project area. That's why a bullet train, if it's civil, or it is some very large projects, if it is E&C, because finally, whether it's a small project or a big project, you need a good project manager. As another saying is, a good project manager will do a bad project in estimation reasonably well. A very average or bad project manager will make a loss even on a good project which is estimated. So I think this is something that we said we will go up the scale, and we felt that we had the right risk management system to tackle the uncertainty that you'll have on large projects. Other very interesting happened. You know, we've been raided twice, but we have survived. And in 2003, Aditya Birla came into the company. And, you know, but we did a very interesting thing. We were anyway going to sell the company, sell the cement plant. We were doing that when he also entered. So we did a good deal with them, whereby they took the cement and we bought back the shares they had in L&T ourselves as employees. Employees Trust. It was a very fantastic scheme that was configured by Mr. Naik. And therefore today, apart from the ESOPs and all, as the L&T Trust, we own 15% of the equity. And with the money that comes through dividends, we do all the welfare for all our employees. And especially those employees who are like workmen and others who do not have the benefits some seniors have, including their education, operations, looking after their children to be sent abroad, etc. That means it's our own trust. That means we don't do it for outsiders, but we do it for all our employees. So this way, I mean, finally, as we all know, a company will never be taken over only if its market cap is high. It should be so expensive to buy that people will think that. But at least we have a little bit of a, because as somebody said, nobody owns, we all thought we emotionally owned L&T, but till we were raided, we realized we are Nanga. So that is how we built this particular part of it. And I think that has been one of the strategies. And internally, one of the last things that I would like to say, we built independent companies. See, when people work in good companies like L&T, the board can only accommodate 5 or 6. But you have maybe 25 people who aspire for that. So we built vertical companies wherever you are sustainable. And in those companies, independent companies, they work like as though they are separate. They even had independent directors almost the same level as what you have in the main board. That way they were groomed to have P&L, to have board meetings, to have more autonomous. And that's how these independent companies came into L&T. That also spearheaded the growth. It also provided a leadership pipeline for us. So I think, by and large, this covers the whole thing. I'll just have to, others have given many jokes, so I'll give a joke on myself and on our company. First of all, let me thank my wife, Jyoti. She has hardly seen me in my operation days. And, you know, She brought up her 2 daughters, and they are accomplished ladies who are doing well on their after marriage and grandchildren now. But now she sees too much of me. I still remember in my farewell, my elder daughter said, "Mummy, do you know what it is now with daddy at home all the time?" So that is that part. But then let me end with a small light joke. You know, our L&T POA is in the forest. We have all the national parks, and way back in 1988, 89, there was no Hiranani. We were only there. NITI was there, IIT was there, and the ashram of Achimra. That's all. And we all used to work very late. And those were the days before the computers, you know. So every tender had some 15 pages, this ONGC, this, that, and it was a nightmare. Only Xerox machine was there. So once that, so we used to work late, because we used to finalize the price only at the last moment. It's something like a share price. Because if you do it too early and it leaks out, and all the effort of putting 4 months of is gone. So once we went, had tea outside. Those days, you know, at 6:30 the canteen will not be there. And we came back. And that time, a lot of monkeys used to sit inside L&T. You know, they must be there, but those times were plenty. You know, that whole area, and this workman used to give it bananas, this, that. Especially in the second shift, when it's very quiet, they're all there. But we had in our group, one guy, like he talked of Rwanda and gorillas, there was one guy who had some great animal sensitivity. So he could not get scared, and he could, you know, confront them in a very friendly way. So as we were waiting, kaise jayenge under, that time it was a building where the stairs, and then you had to go into that building. It's called G3 building those days. So he went, the head monkey was sitting, babies were there, big monkeys. Maybe about 50 of them were there. So they're also there, you can make out the leader, huh? So he went to the big leader and said something fairly close to its ears. And that monkey, you know, pura chati, you know, like all these people today, the film stars show their muscles. Aisa kiya. Then again he went and murmured something. And the monkey started crying, weeping. Baap re, tu rula diya abhi. Then I was just watching, then he again went and murmured something. The head monkey gave a big signal, a shriek, all the monkeys went away. So we could enter. So then we asked him, before we started our work, "Arey yaar, tum kya bola?" He said, "Pehle to main bataya ki arey hum to L&T mein hai yaar. हम ये से बड़े-बड़े इमारतें बनाते हैं, प्रोजेक्ट बनाते हैं, ये करते हैं, वो करते हैं, इंडिया का शान है हम लोग." हाँ, उसने ऐसा किया. Then he said, "अभी क्या, वो उसको रुला दिया?" He said, "नहीं यार, मैं उसको बताया, देखो हम लोग 8 बजे आते हैं, 11 बजे जाते हैं, पूरा काम ही काम करते हैं, इधर ही ऑलमोस्ट होते हैं. We don't see our families. Oh, so, and we used to work 6 days a week. L&T didn't have 5-day week. So he felt sorry for us. So he started crying. Now he said, "Abhi tum kya bola yaar? You went and murmured something, वो भाग गया." अरे यार, मैंने सोचा इतना भी emotion हो गया, इतना शान हमारा. मैंने बोला, "अरे यार, do you want to work in L&T?"
Okay, so 4th of 4. Many firsts for me today. I think it's the first time I'm speaking wearing a maroon shirt with checks, because normally you will see me like this. But I was told no coat, very informal, so I agreed to that. This is perhaps the gorgeous I have ever spoken to my house. I live just about walking distance from here. The most heterogeneous crowd that I'm talking to, and I thought I won't know anyone here, but I came I was surprised that I know lots of people here. And I guess the most instructions that I've ever gotten by the organizer for his speech. And I have almost like 7 pages of WhatsApp or 8 WhatsApp that I have received, including I soon to speak 1 minute more than 25 minutes. So you keep track. At 23 minutes, you tell me that 23 minutes are over, then I'll stop. And when he saw my slides, he got a little worried. So he said, well, it's a Saturday night, mixed crowd, so try and entertain people a little bit. And I don't know how to do that. And fortunately, I'm 4th speaker. Other 3 have done that. So I won't try to entertain people. Okay? So what I'm going to try and do in the 25 minutes is pack in about 45 minutes worth of content. And I've chosen to use slides, makes it easier to kind of grasp what I'm saying. And in the first, I'm going to talk about my life story, just briefly. And then about 6 to 7 things that I have kind of learned over the years in what has driven me in my career and what has worked for me. And then talk a little bit about 2 or 3 areas that I've been involved in. And I don't know how much of it I'll cover, but let me start. So starting with my story, life story, very, very similar to Prakash. In fact, we can almost like I can copy it, except for 2 things. Never wrote a book, never will write a book, and could never become an entrepreneur. Even though I'm a Marwari, but somehow that entrepreneurship didn't come in my blood. So life story. I'm sorry? Rajasthani, but not born in Rajasthan. I'm born in a very small town in MP. Went to Hindi medium school. I still remember my first 7 years I lived in that small village called Harpalpur. I still remember do ka do, do dni char, do ti achhe and all that. Came to Calcutta at the age of 7. That's when I learned my alphabets. English was always a problem for me, Hindi medium school. The first time I wrote a paper in English was when I did the IIT entrance exam and barely managed to get in. Barely managed to get in. I think I got the last seat in mechanical engineering in IIT Kanpur. But I was told that if English was not counted for ranking, I would have been in top 50. And as a result of that, after 2 or 3 years, they dropped counting English for ranking. So that was a contribution that perhaps I made. I remember my ragging time. I was asked, when did I come to the campus? And just like you said that think in Hindi, translate to English, I said, I came here tomorrow. And you can imagine the choicest language that was used by the seniors to tell me that I have no business being in IIT. Anyways, as luck would have it, things worked out well for me in IIT. Graduated in time. My dream job at that time was either L&T. They didn't even call me for an interview. or telco, that is Tata Research at that time, telco, Tata Motors. And they did call me for an interview, and after the interview was over, they said, we will not hire you. I said, why not? He said, because you're top in the class. So I said, so what's wrong with that? They said, because you're going to go to USA. And therefore, we don't want to waste our time to try and hire you and all that. And he was right. I did go to USA, went to Cornell, got my PhD from there, then got what was perhaps a dream job in US at that time, General Motors. Worked there for 14 years and came back. Now, even after I joined General Motors, having done my PhD in USA, I still had difficulty in English. And my bosses realized that. They actually gave me a tutor for 14 weeks to teach me how to speak in English at that time. And that was very useful. And that was very useful for me. After finishing, I guess just like most Indians used to do at that time, after I got my PhD, got a job, I came back. My parents had lined up a bunch of girls for me to see in a 1 week period. Did that. My wife was number 10 out of the girls that I saw. Quickly got married and went back. Had a honeymoon also in about two or 3 days. Went back because my visa was expiring, and so on. And then the American dream that one has: go there, get your PhD, get married, get a house, have kids, have a backyard. All that was sort of working fine. And then suddenly, I remember that ghazal from Naam, Chitti Aayi Hai, right? Now you can imagine somebody who's living in USA, and if you hear that, I saw that movie on a Saturday, and as luck would have it, on Sunday, I opened India Abroad, which was a newspaper published from New York. And there's an advertisement calling Indians home from ISER. And I looked at my wife. I said, Stelvi. She looked at me. Let's do it. And that's it. So, but it took me 4 years after that to actually gather courage to leave USA and come back to India, or 4 years to get a meaningful job with Mahindra. I remember one auto company I interviewed. I won't name the company. So the person said, Goenka ji, आपको hire तो हम कर लेंगे, लेकिन आप करोगे क्या यहाँ पर? The next one where the promoter was interviewing me, Goenka ji, you have lived in USA for 18 years. I said, yeah. You must have made a lot of money. So why do you need to work? So I said, no, it doesn't work like that. Just because you lived in 18 years doesn't mean that you made a lot of money. Anyways, so finally I got a desired job in Mahindra in '93. And to some extent, luck played a very big role. I think you had talked about hard work, you talked about the sort of the plan. But I think in many cases, luck also plays a very important role in what happens. And as luck would have it, the day I came for interview to Mahindra was a Mumbai Bandh, and because of Babri Masjid. And only person who could get to the office was Anand Mahindra. So he interviewed me. And if you are interviewed by Anand Mahindra, there is no way you can say no, because the charisma that he has. And basically what he told me was that, look, Pawan, India has opened up. We have all the auto companies that are going to be coming to India. I, as Mahindra, have 3 choices, or 2 choices. Either I become a licensee of a big company, or I have my own products on which to build the company. And I don't want the first one, I want the second one. And if you want to join that dream, please come and join us. And when somebody says like that to an auto engineer, there cannot be a better offer than that. And I am generally considered to be a left-brain person. Everything is Excel sheet and calculate and this and that. There was one decision I made with the right brain, and I said, I'm in. Not knowing where I will be working, not knowing who my boss would be, not knowing what my career growth will be. And in fact, my wife and I often look back and say, I left a job at that time in CTC terms about $120,000 way back in '93 to a job which paid me 6 lakh rupees a year. And we think we must have made some conversion mistake. There's no way we could have expected a job paying me 6 lakh from $120,000. But that was the best decision that we made, even if it was a conversion mistake. And I think to some extent timing is very important. If I had come back to India 3 years too early, I would have probably gone back, because there's not much that could be done in auto industry at that time. And if I had waited another 3-4 years, probably would not have come back, because my kids would be teenagers and it would be very unfair to them and they probably would have disagreed. But Suresh had asked me to kind of say what drove us to do that. I talked about the GTI, and that's a fact. I'm not just making it up. That is a fact. And it kind of, I remember the final decision. We were driving from New York towards Detroit, and on the turnpike, I-80, I think it's called, I-80, and I told my wife that, okay, if we go straight, we go to Chicago and we buy the 220 volt appliances, then there's no turning back. Then we have to go to India if we bought the 220 volt appliances. Or we go right to Detroit, and then we forgot all about going back to India. So my wife thought, straight. And that was it. No turning point from there. Okay. So coming to India, I think the dream that Anand talked about of building a R&D in an Indian automotive company, what he offered me was a blank check, not as a paycheck, blank check to develop R&D. And no interference from anyone. You do what you want to do. Okay? And it really was gratifying to see that from 93, when I came in, we had 50 people in R&D at that time. 2002, we launched Scorpio, and in 9 years, and that changed the whole sort of future of Mahindra, and not just of Mahindra, I believe to some extent Indian automotive industry also. Because that was the first totally Indian designed car, first car that Mahindra could even dream of selling at 6 lakh. I mean, to us, to sell a car at 6 lakh was unheard of. And we were not making money at 6 lakh. We made money much later. Scorpio turned out to be very profitable, but when we launched it, it was not making money. And to do it with an average age of engineers of 27, most of them fresh out of college, having never done any serious design work. Even I had not done any serious design work. I came from R&D, pure R&D, right? So that really was a very gratifying thing for me and for Mahindra. And I think what it did to some extent was not just about launching a car, but about giving confidence to people in Mahindra and to the Indian automotive industry engineers that India can compete with the best in the world. Right? And if you look at the auto industry today, we are the third largest auto industry, and I have some slides if I get to it to kind of talk about the journey. But what has happened is, in spite of every player being in India, every automotive player is in India, is still, if you include Maruti, 70% market share is with Indian companies, if you include Maruti, if you don't include 25%, in the passenger vehicle. In the three-wheeler, 80% Indian players. In commercial vehicle, 90% Indian players. In two-wheeler, 67% Indian players. So you can imagine that in spite of everybody being in India, Indian players have not lost out. And if you go back to Anand tells me that when he had one of the big four do a strategy project for Mahindra before I joined the company, the outcome of the strategy project was get out of auto business. You will not survive. Just say in tractor, you will do well. And if he had listened to that consultant, not just Mahindra, perhaps the growth of auto industry wouldn't have come to that stage. So I think these are the little things that change not just the course of your own life, course of the company, but the course of a whole industry. Now, I'm going to skip the slides because I have talked too much without the slides, but you can just see it. These are kind of my learning that I want to talk about, but perhaps not very appropriate well, let me spend a minute or so. See, I have always believed, and I think it was kind of talked about by other speakers also, that you have to have a superordinate goal. If you're going to do well, if you're going to lead a company, lead a nation, you have to think way beyond yourself, way beyond what's in it for me. You have to have a superordinate goal to see what is the legacy that I want to leave behind. When I am gone, what do I want to be known for? If I'm writing a book or somebody writing a book, let's write the last chapter of the book. That's what I'm working towards, right? So that's having a superordinate goal, dream big, have a purpose. Taking big bets, and I'm going to give you some examples of how big bets almost always are must, and other speakers have also talked about it, how big bets really make a difference. Without that, you will only make incremental benefits, and big bets also mean that they will not all work out. Otherwise, it's not a big bet. Some of them will fail. And a good example is our friend Elon Musk. the kind of big bets that he has taken in 3 different areas, really most people wouldn't have thought about, and he has more or less succeeded in each one of them. Never become complacent, no matter how well you do. And paranoia, that means what can go wrong with what I'm doing, is always something that will help you to ensure that you cover all the bases. Never lose quest for learning, no matter how old you are or how much you know. And I like the quote from Henry Ford: anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. Believe in people, and no one can do it alone. No one can do it alone. Whether you are a small scale, large scale, corporate, nation, whatever, you have to believe in people, and just not believe in people, but also help people rise. Many of you have seen that symbol with Mahindra, rise, right? That's what rise is all about. You have to help people rise, and I believe that many people in this room would have had somebody in their life who have helped them to rise. Right? And now it's your turn to help people rise. And that doesn't mean that you compromise with anything, but just think about, I'm doing this, but in the process, can I help someone rise? And it'll make a huge difference. Now let me just very quickly go through automotive sector, and I've talked a little bit about it in the preamble. This was in 1990s. You remember Padmini and Ambassador, and if you had it, you were envy of your neighbor, right? The superordinate goal at that time, what built the automotive industry to some extent, was Sanjay Gandhi's goal, when he talked about producing the people's car. And about the same time, though it's not sort of talked about too much, perhaps the big guys, the Rahul Bajaj, the Kesab Mahindra, the Ratan Tata, all of these people sitting in a room somewhere, set a goal. Indian auto industry will become truly global. Now think in 92, 93, to think about the auto industry becoming truly global, responsible industry, and will be an important pillar of economic growth. And that's what the industry has delivered. Now at that time in 93, that would have been something crazy to think about. Just see what has happened. 94, GDP contribution 2.7, 17, 7.1, employment 10 million at that time, 24 million now, revenue 4.2 to 106, and rank, global rank, from 21st to 6th. Just in 13 years, 24th to 6th. Now, I'm stopping at 17, I'll add 23 now. So if you look at 17 to 23, these have been difficult years for the auto industry. In fact, auto industry slowed down. It started even before COVID, and then COVID hit. But still some growth, but keeping pace with GDP more or less. But what has happened now is rank is 3rd. Just behind China, USA, and then India. Now just think who would have ever thought that India will be the 3rd largest automotive market in the world. And as I told you earlier, that a lot of it is really the Indian players. This was 2002 Scorpio, 2022 Scorpio. Now, big bets, I just want to spend a minute on that, and just taking it in Mahindra context. Scorpio was the biggest bet that any company could have taken. Investment was 600 crore, though that was perhaps about 1/4 of what a multinational would have spent, but 600 crore was 3 years profit for Mahindra. 3 years profit. So that's a big bet. And if Scorpio had failed, company would have survived, for sure, right? So that's a big bet that was taken at that time, but Anand Mahindra's view was, it's not a big bet. It's either this, or we might as well fold shop and go home and do something else, right? And therefore, to him, this was the only way. The Chakan plant that we set up in 2009, 2010, this is over 700 acres. This was a big bet. This is a time of slowdown, 2009. We spent investing 5,000 crore in that plant, when there was a biggest slowdown that we had seen for a long, long time. And today, that plant is full. 700 acres is full. There's not an inch left. Right? R&D center. The whole thing is best in technology, Mahindra Research Valley in Chennai. From 50 people, we have now gone to 3,000 people in Mahindra. Okay? Invested about 700 crore in setting up this R&D, just the R&D center over 70 acres. Electric vehicle, a big bet, but there's a but here. I talked about courage of conviction in one of my drill side. I guess we didn't have enough courage of conviction to invest big in electric vehicle, and we kind of pulled back, right? Because we started very early in 2010, nobody was talking electric vehicles. For a long time, nothing much happened. So we said, well, let's not invest too much more money, and we slowed down. Now, again, investing more, and hopefully we'll catch up. And the proudest moment for me, and I have to show you this slide, sorry. The proudest moment for me in my career was a statement that Mr. Ratan Tata made in his AGM in 2012, and he actually made this statement. Now, coming from Ratan Tata in his AGM, praising Mahindra and saying, so that's lessons learned. I'm okay. In terms of auto industry, the first one is leadership and entrepreneurship. These are leadership of the names I mentioned. And what is important here is that these leaders were not thinking just about their company. They were thinking about the industry. They were thinking about how to make the industry big, how to make the industry responsible, how to make the industry add economic value to the country. A lot of entrepreneurship in our supplier base. And some of you, I think 2 or 3 of you are suppliers to auto industry. A lot of entrepreneurship. I mean, if you look at the suppliers in 2000 we were doing Scorpio. There are hardly any suppliers who could do any meaningful thing. And today, India has one of the strongest supplier base anywhere. Superordinate gold, I talked about. Taking big bets, I gave you some Mahindra examples, but every company has those examples. The relationship between MSMEs, and the suppliers, and the OEMs, the large companies, has been a backbone of this industry, because in auto industry, 70% of what goes in the car, or 70% of what you are paying for the car is going to a supplier. Only 30% is coming to the OEM. That includes all the profit, marketing, manufacturing, everything. Focus on quality, and technology. That's a big enabler, because if you look at the companies that didn't survive, and those 2 cars that I have shown you are the 2 companies that didn't survive because they didn't invest in technology, right? And the companies who did well were the companies that really pulled out all stops to invest in technology. And agility, to move fast. You talked about BS4 coming in. That was a big problem for the industry at that time, but the industry moved very fast. After that, BS6 and so on and so forth. So a lot of things that have happened. Now, I'll just take a couple of minutes on the second part. Now, I'm leaving automotive industry behind. This Atmanirbhar Bharat in manufacturing. The reason I'm bringing it up is that there are a lot of entrepreneurs here, a lot of people who are involved in manufacturing in some way. This is a task that was given to me by Mr. Piyush Goyal just at the beginning of COVID to chair a committee called Scale Committee. And the reason I'm showing this is that the opportunities that India has in manufacturing is mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. You have all heard about China +1, right? The +1, if we can make India become the +1, you look at the industry that I have put down here. On the left number is what is the global trade. The right number is what India is exporting. Auto component, 1.3 trillion. India's share is 19 billion, 1.3%. Furniture, 300 billion. India's share is 3.5 billion, 1%. Chemicals, 4.7 trillion. India's share is 24 billion. That's how much? Less than 1%, right? So if we were to put our mind to it, and this is the right time because government of India is absolutely focused on how to grow manufacturing. If all of you in this room who are in manufacturing think big and take big bets, lot can happen. But of course, it will require to have that kind of a courage, conviction that yes, you can do it. And finally, I want to talk a couple minutes on the space sector because that's my current job. You would have seen Chairman in space and wondered what that means. So let me first tell you a story. I got a call on a Friday, sometime in September 21, not a call, an email from a joint secretary in Department of Space, saying that please send us your resume, PMO wants it. Okay, PMO wants it. I sent my resume at 10:30. Next day, 12 o'clock, I get a call saying that PM has approved your nomination to be chairman of InSpace. I said, thank you very much. No, the story doesn't get over. So thank you very much. Can I go ahead and say yes, that you've accepted? I said, no, give me some time. So I put the phone down. I went to Google to find out what InSpace was. I had never heard of InSpace. I didn't know what it was. So then it told me what InSpace was. And then after, the rest of it doesn't matter. But that's how it started. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is when it comes to technology and leadership in technology, space is one of the areas where India has done extremely well. Okay? Many of you, obviously it was one man's vision that Rocket Boys had made it very popular. More people who didn't know about space know a lot about space now. But one man's vision really created a whole sector. And support that one man got from then Prime Minister, Mr. Nehru, played an extremely big role. I don't know if that would have happened today. I'm not making political statement. I'm just saying that they're the kind of big bets that even the politicians took at that time to say, I'm going to support something. And for India to think that I'm going to invest money in space at the time when we were importing sort of discarded wheat from America called PL4 under PL480 program, for a PM to think that I'm going to invest in space is something that was a superordinate goal, right? So that's the important thing. That's the important thing here. And when you look at what has happened, and this was the amazing thing for me, what I'm learning in this job now is two things. One is about space, and second is also how the government functions, because I'm an actual employee of the government. So it's not an advisory role or anything like that. I get paid a paycheck by the government. Don't ask me how big the paycheck is, but a paycheck by the government. So the thing that have happened over the last 60 years in the space sector, the kind of infrastructure that has been created, the kind of R&D that is being done, the kind of people that are hired, I can say that Mahindra would have felt very lucky if we had the quality of people that ISRO has. It's unbelievable. So this is a photograph that left one that every Indian has seen. Okay, sort of a part of the rocket being carried on a bicycle, and on the right you see where we are. And this is a sector which is literally a dream of a billion people, right? Chandrayaan will be launched, Chandrayaan 3 on 13th of July. I'm sure many of you will watch this on TV. It will land on 23rd of August. Again, you'll be watching on TV, I'm sure. And if you want to go and watch, you can go and watch also. But it's one of the very few sectors, technology-led sector, where India will be at the head table in a global forum. And these guys have done an excellent job. Right? So again, I just want, the reason I'm again saying or talking about space is that India can play a technology game if we do everything right. Sometimes we believe that technology is not something that we can invest in, but we have to put our mind to it. The government, the private sector has to work together to make it happen, and then we can definitely play that game. So I'm going to stop here with a simple message that in life, you can achieve almost anything. You have to have the right mentorship, and the mentorship, of course, starts from your parents, goes on to your school teachers and so on. And you have to have people who help you rise, and nobody can really succeed without having somebody who has helped you rise. Like if I take example of my boss in GM, who recognized that English was a weakness and put a 14-week tutor to me. That helped me. Maybe without that, I wouldn't be here today talking to you, right? So those are the kind of things that happen and you cannot always be making decisions using spreadsheet. Sometimes you have to let your heart decide and not your head. And the biggest decision of my life that I made, my wife and I made, of moving to India. By the way, she was more responsible for it than I was. So the biggest decision that we made was not a decision that would have been supported by any spreadsheet. It was a foolish decision. In fact, many people in Mahindra thought that I got fired by GM, deported by immigration department, and that's the reason I've come back to India. Then I had to show them a letter from GM. They said, don't resign, go on a leave of absence. And I'm on a leave of absence here right now. Okay, so enough of it. I think 4 of us have covered more or less similar things. Some of us have come from very, very modest background and have been really, and none of that becomes a constraint if you are in the right place, the right time, and do the right thing, and there's no substitute for hard work. Thank you.
I think we still have times for some Q&A. Yeah. If the audience wants to ask any questions, we've been listening intently, of course.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's a very interesting talk by everybody. I just wanted to know, we heard of space. I mean, space we have done so well. So how much of it is military? How much of it is civil? Not clear.
So, see, so first of all, what we are trying to do in space is that even though India, technology-wise, is very advanced, the overall economic sector, space sector in India still is very small. It's only about $8 billion. Whereas globally, it is $450 billion. India is only $8 billion, right? So we are trying to grow this sector by bringing in more private sector players to come in. So far, space is only a ISRO domain. And those of you who are investors may want to think about investing in space companies because there will be some unicorns very soon. Right now, the most highest valued company, I'm not talking the L&Ts and all, I'm talking those space startup, is only about 200 million. And I think in about 1.5, 2 years, you'll see the first unicorn. So coming back to your question, there's a lot that's happening in defense, right? Everything that ISRO does, the defense almost gets the first priority. There are satellites that are launched, what we call strategic users. We don't call it defense, strategic users, which are not, the data of that is also very confidential. It does not go to the same route. Defense has its own setup of analyzing the data, and the kind of information that they get from space is mind-boggling. I mean, I would have never imagined that till I started working for Department of Space. They know everything about China or about all their neighbors. China knows more about India than India knows about China. But there's so much information that is available. And space plays a huge role in preparing ourselves to ensure that we are not vulnerable. I cannot say that too much more, but rest assured that India is leveraging the space technology in a very, very big way for defense.
This question is for Mr. Goenka. Two questions actually. How is it working with Mr. Anand Mahindra? I think he's really very, very well known all over the world and everything, right from a sense of humor, everything. That's one. Also, when you set up your first vehicle assembly plant in Sri Lanka, I think you all did that in
Sri Lanka?
In Sri Lanka, 2018 or 19.
Yeah.
So how was it? I mean, it's don't have to tell me everything, but how did you decide to be in a place like Sri Lanka? Because technically, it's like a small island nation, and assembly, and all of that. Thank you.
So the second question is easier to answer than the first one. Second one, see, Sri Lanka for Mahindra is the second largest international market, okay? And therefore it made, and Sri Lanka has very high import duty on CBU. But large companies will never think of setting up a plant there because they need much bigger volume. The agility that an Indian company would have, something that we can do that a multinational will not do. And therefore, in fact, we were delayed 4 to 5 years. I wanted to set it up much sooner. And that gave us a very big advantage of being able to sell vehicles in Sri Lanka at a much lower cost, right? And we did it through a distributor in Sri Lanka. And I think that worked out very well for Mahindra because later on, Sri Lanka almost banned import of built up vehicles. And Mahindra was the only car company that has set up a plant, assembly plant in Sri Lanka. So that worked out well for us. Now, working with Mr. Anand Mahindra can only be described as having a dream boss. Okay? If you just think of, I'll tell you something. Think of automotive industry professionals. How many professionals do you know who come in the news, are visible, and are sort of known? Very few. Look at Mahindra. You would have never seen Anand Mahindra in a big launch interacting with the media. He will always put Pawan Goenka in front. He didn't have to. Even if I forced him to come for a launch, he will give his speech, and before media comes to him, goes away. He told me, Pawan, if I am there, they'll all want to talk to me, not to you. And I don't want that to happen. Right? So that just gives you an example of the way he works. Very hands-off. Okay? We could do a M&A, and he will come to know about it on the day we are signing. And a very right-brained person. So it was kind of seen that Anand and Pawan complement each other because Pawan is totally left-brain, Anand is completely right-brain. Both statements are not true. He is more left than right. He is more left than people think he is, and I'm more right than people think I am. but a good compliment all the same. I think he built an organization with values that obviously he inherited from his uncle and his father, Kesab and Harish Mahindra, and he never let that slip. And one of the few promoters in India of large groups where professionals were in the front. No matter which company you look at, whether you look at Tech Mahindra, Mahindra Finance, Mahindra and Mahindra, any company, all the professionals of Mahindra are reasonably well known. Very few promoter groups will have that happen.
The bank would be dictating, where they would say the country of origin matters. So therefore India, a few other countries always left out, including Mr. Nayak is very famous for saying that we need a tit for tat with respect to Petronas, where they would always prefer the Bhumi Patras versus the Indian suppliers, even though we were very qualified. So has that problem been pretty much resolved? Is India now, let's call it for a better metaphor, are we white-skinned enough to say that, if we are there, we are absolutely accepted anywhere in the world?
Well, we are much more largely accepted. I think the Exim Bank part of our role, of our share, is we don't worry too much about it. Like we have supplied some armed fast patrol boats to Vietnam. So it's more done. We've done a metro in Mauritius. But that's a small part of our total. So we are part of the national angle. We have grown so large now. Not only L&T, I'm saying other companies also. So the Exim Bank is important. But Indian Exim Bank is not very big.
No, I mean the European Exim Bank would say that you have to source from Italy and France or things like that. And they would therefore use that as a tool of kind of having
those restrictions will be there. But as I said, we have moved more to Saudi Arabia and all who have got the cash. So basically you have to change your strategy. When you start with, you want African Development Bank, you want Asian Development Bank, World Bank if it's in India because you get a preference. But now, we have gone ahead. Those restrictions will still be there, but you've gone far ahead of that.
I have a question. I consider to be very privileged to be with 4 brilliant minds of the country in this room. And I think it's more addressed to Mr. Goenka, and the rest of you can also answer. PM has identified some brilliant minds. How do you see the country being taken as a leadership from the vision of the PM? By the PM.
You are the best person to ask.
I think our time is up, right? So look, it's a very difficult question for anyone to answer, especially at 10 p.m. on a Saturday after a few drinks. But let me tell you, since I have had opportunity to interact with him directly, he is definitely a person driven. Okay, you can agree, disagree with anything, and I'm not trying to take any political side, but nobody can disagree that he truly wants to see India become great. That you cannot disagree with, right? And he has no personal agenda except to leave a legacy behind where the history will remember him, right? Other than that, he has no other personal agenda, right? Now, I had two one-on-one meetings with him after I took this role. And I'll give you a couple of instances that shows the humbleness of a man who is normally regarded as not being very humble, right? So the first meeting that took place, for some reason, it was delayed by half an hour. So as I walked in, the first thing he says is, "Goenka ji, मैंने आपको इंतजार कराया, उसके लिए माफी मांगता हूँ." Now, would anybody think that Mr. Modi will talk like that to an employee of the government? I'm an employee of the government at that point of time, right? Second thing he says is, मेरे कहने से आपने ये काम लिया है, उसके लिए धन्यवाद. Again, okay? And as I'm leaving, okay, he says, "गोयनका जी, आपने जो काम लिया है, अगर ये आप इस काम में सफल होते हैं, तो पूरा देश आपको धन्यवाद देगा." Now, can you imagine the motivation that it can create to any person for the Prime Minister to say the whole country is going to thank you for doing this task, right? And when I talked to him during the conversation, I'm meeting for the first time one-on-one, right? And the people had told me that it will be very sort of courtesy meeting, don't expect more than 10 minutes, lasted 40 minutes. He talked about everything. At that time, the farm unrest was going on. So I told him that, sir, farm में space technology का काफ़ी use है. बोले, गोयनका जी, कुछ नहीं हो सकता है. जब तक हम farms को combine नहीं करेंगे, छोटे छोटे farm रहेंगे, कभी कुछ नहीं हो सकता है. मैंने ये farm laws लाए हैं, अभी देखिए आप political उसमें फंस गए. Right? So again, his understanding of this issue couldn't have been briefed to him. That was not subject of a conversation. It just came up. So any subject that came up, I was quite taken by his understanding of this thing. And in fact, I asked the PM of staff that, do you brief him before a meeting? Because he talked so much about space, which is not something that a PM will be thinking about day in, day out, right? So he said, yes, we do brief him, but that's only for our satisfaction that we're doing our work. Even if he didn't brief him, he will still be equally versatile in talking about this. Okay. So having said that, see, clearly he is trying to get talent from outside government to come in the government, right? And if you look at some of the ministers that he has brought in, like West now, for example, some of the IAS officers who have become ministers, like our Foreign Affairs Minister, nobody will disagree that these are the best performing ministers right now, people that is brought in from outside, right? In fact, when I was hesitating whether to take this job or not, because I really didn't want to work full time at this point of time, and especially with my office going to be in Ahmedabad and me living in Mumbai. So the guy who was trying to convince me from PM's office, he doesn't have any portfolio. He doesn't have any job description. He told me that, Goenka ji, if you had said yes, you wouldn't even know I existed. Because you have said no, I had said no once, I'm calling you, okay? And then he also said that this is an experiment. And your success in this job is as important to us as to you, because if you don't succeed, everybody will be lining up saying, I told you so. You cannot bring people from outside the government to work in the government. And if you succeed, then we create more like you in the government, right? So again, this is like, see, bureaucracy is very strong. You know that very well, right? And nobody would like an outsider to suddenly come in and do what they should be doing. And therefore, so fighting the bureaucracy even for him is a task, right? And that's what he's trying to do with all the experiments that he's doing. He's gotten somebody in Invest India to lead Invest India from Intel, MD, CEO of Intel India. So a lot of such things are going on. Effort is being made. But again, these are like 3, 4, 5 people who have come in. The joint secretaries who came in once, about half a dozen from outside. That experiment didn't work very well. The bureaucracy didn't allow them to really survive. So I would think that 5 more years of Modi or 5 more years with BJP are more or less given, right? That will for sure happen. Whether Modi will stick to his 75-year age limit, in which case he has to stop in the middle of the term somewhere. I hope he finds a way of getting around that statement he has made. I think if country gets 6 more years of Mr. Modi as Prime Minister, and I would think that in the next term, he would perhaps be more aggressive, because he knows that's the last term for him for sure. He'll be more aggressive, and many things that he politically could not do, he probably would do. And his very good support. Let me also tell you that when BJP came in power in 2014, right? I got very worried in my professional situation because I knew many Congress ministers very well, and I didn't know anybody in BJP. And my concern was that BJP doesn't really have administrative experience, right? And how will these people run the government? But today, if you look at the top 6 or 7 ministers, I think they're very well-performing ministers. You look at Piyush Goyal, who I interact with quite a bit. Every day, his day ends at 10:30. It's not once or twice, every day, okay? He goes home at 10:30, eats dinner, then he and his wife watches TV. They watch TV from 12 o'clock for some time, get up at 6:37, do yoga, and then start the day. And you talk to him at 9:30, he will be as fresh as he will be at 10 a.m. in the morning. And he is not an exception. That's how many ministers are working. You look at Mr. Gadkari. He's a main-driven, right? Nobody can question that the way he has developed the road infrastructure. I don't think anybody else would have done it. And this is like janoon hai unko. If you go and talk to him, again, I had a lot of opportunity to talk to him for my automotive business. He told me, Mr. Goenka, I just want to do 2 things. My very beginning. I want to reduce the road deaths by half. And I don't want India to have to import a single drop of oil. That's superordinate goal. That's superordinate goal, right? So, like that, everyone, I've seen top ministers are like that. Of course, you know, all the political ministers, they'll be there, you can't help it. But anyways, as I said, it can take forever.
One last question somebody had waiting for some time, and then we'll have to close because dinner is waiting.
Yeah, this is a question for KV sir. Sir, what did your senior Mr. Rai do to keep you with L&T for more than 33 years and not thinking...
What did you say?
What did your senior Mr. Nair do to keep you with L&T? Mr. Naik do to keep you with L&T for 33 years and before ESOPs were introduced?
So what's your name, beta?
Akhilesh Singhal.
What do you do?
We are a metal recycling company. I'm working in that, yes.
As Pawan said, first, you know, I always jokingly say, you have to make some... I worked 49 years, 5 months in L&T, yeah? 5 months. Only Mr. Naik has worked longer. Okay, he worked, I think, 52 or something. So first thing is, as I said, you have to first have a passion on something. And in my case, at least like Pawan, all of us, when we passed out those days, it was before the IIM Ahmedabad and all that. So we were engineers, you know. And as he said, it was Tata's, Telco, L&T, few companies only were there. And as I said, when I joined L&T, you know, we were all IIT boys. We were staying together in paying guests. So that time L&T used to say, Larsen & Toubro Engineers Limited. We were excited. When we went to L&T, abhi to 1000 gaadi hai. वो ज़माने में पोए में 3 गाड़ी था And we used to see all these fellows suited, booted. Are isa damages and managers unlimited. So basically, first you had a passion, okay? Then, as he said, you would have very good bosses. I mean, like he talked of Mr. Anand Mahindra, we had Ho class and many other bosses, and Mr. Nayak. So first of all, you have to feel that, you are doing something great and building, not only yourself, juniors. So basically, I think thoda pagal hona mangta hai. There's no, I mean, like he said, he came down from there to there. That if you see the type of salary I was getting in L&T and what I was going to get in Union Carbide, and then later on so much attractions to go to Middle East and many. So you have to be a little mad. So only great companies are built by people who stay. No other way great companies are built. And finally, you have to see that what you're doing is making some great impact, and the sabashi you get. And you have to be, all of us are middle class fellows only. So we were happy eating in Radio Punjab. The first time I went to a Chinese restaurant, Dr. Rameyer, who was that time in Power Gas, he took our family. We couldn't afford to go to a Chinese restaurant. We were traveled in 3 tiers. We were traveled in that 4 limited bus sitting on the top. My wife used to make a sandwich. And then in the theater, people would say, hey, bite, bite. And then I would tell them, "Bhai, itna lamba ho, kya karu main baita hu?"
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Akhilesh. Okay. Do you want the mic to come over there?
No, last question. Rajiv is last question.
And then
I have a question for Prakash Jain. We'll take offline. No, the question is basically at what curve cybersecurity becoming so much important for corporates and for all of us who are daily dealing with the digitization and whatnot. So in that context, where does India feature in terms of global? What stage of the curve that India is on the cybersecurity? If you look at the last 3 years, there's a lot of remarkable changes have come in this technology. One is work from anywhere culture. So work from home, work from anywhere has forced the companies to migrate their application to the cloud, inevitably. Number 2 is the embracement of the e-commerce, e-health, doctors, online, consultation, everything you name it has gone into the. Today we do the cybersecurity for NPCI is about 8 crore transactions. 440 banks on board, So one is the work from anywhere, cloud migration, faster digitization, and now the 5G, which is edge speed of 500 megs and higher. So that will enable further digitization in terms of the IoT and OT. I wear this device called, I don't know if anybody knows Woof. No? It's good, you should go online and do it. Woof is Woof 4. It's an IoT. It measures the, respiration, 24 hours. It measures the pulse 40, 50 times per minute. Heart. It measures the rest heart rate, RHR, when you're sleeping. That's very critical. And it measures HRV, heart rate variable, that is between the 2 pulses. I mean, those who doctors knows it, right? And respiration, oxygen. So if one wears it, it will tell you in advance that go get COVID test done. So only thing missing is a small implant somewhere in your bloodstream so that blood chemistry, blood electrolytes can be fed through, and then everything is done. Then you don't need doctors around. This will be like a companion as a doctor around. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is the amount of data, the surface area increase in terms of the reach. So that means more vulnerable to the threats, more ransomware. That means people come in, can lock in your data, and then deal in the bitcoins, because that's why bitcoins are expensive, because that's how it's a currency. And third is obviously the malware. So all these are the threat. So surface has gone up. So it's a There is no boundary. Yeah. The highest is like a CIS country, Russia and all that. Brazil is one of the top. China is one. Good. So if you come to our center, you will see how we have a globe and the attacks are flowing in, like a rocket's flying in. You can see.
Thank you, sir. That's very
Thank you,
kind.
thank you.
I call Mr. Lalit Vashishta to say a word of thanks, please. And then we have some words from Kevin.
Very good evening. Now, this has been one of the most mesmerizing evenings with 4 eminent speakers here. KV sir is from the Frame Fraternity, Chemical Engineering, and now I'm the Vice Chairman of IICHE, with your blessings. We've had the privilege to listen to such talks which are so inspiring, and I would like to extend the heartfelt thanks to Pawan Goenka ji, Mr. Prakash Jain, K Venkataramanan, and Mr. Sandeep Batra. Your wisdom and experience has broadened our horizons today. We look forward to more of interactions with you. An evening like this cannot be complete without the sponsors. A special thanks to our sponsors for their generous support, allowing us to provide a delightful atmosphere. We appreciate the alcohol and beverages being sponsored by Suntory, Monsoon Mead, and the Carlsberg beer. So you're going to enjoy some nice spirited evening now. We also express our gratitude to the audiovisual and backdrop support given by Everton. Our sincere appreciation goes to the team of the club for their dedicated efforts in making this event seamless, from their meticulous planning and catering arrangements, which you will have a taste of very soon. And they have not let us down for so many years. I'm sure tonight will be the same. We are also thankful to Creative and Awards, Mr. Prashant Kalbag, who has sponsored the souvenirs. He has been always over generous, and he always sponsors these for our events. And we are thrilled with the overwhelming interest shown by the club members for such events, which we have started. Your feedback has been really, really invaluable, and we are actively working to incorporate external participation soon, because we have already got the internal club members. Now we are also planning to get some external speakers over here. We are excited to announce some things about Goat Talks. We are going to be launching a website soon, which will be covering all the speeches, the talks, give you news and views about the events which are coming up. We already have a YouTube channel, so you can actually go to the YouTube channel and see the past events and even this event, barring a few statements people said don't show. So maybe we will be editing those and not showing them. And we extend our deepest appreciation to a team which has formed, carrying out this event. The team was introduced to you, led by our Mr. R Suresh. A big hand for him. And lastly, I would like to have a big applause for this audience over here. A big hand. It should not stop. Seriously, because you have really been motivating us. You have really taken efforts to come on a Saturday evening. There could be better things to do, but that shows the enthusiasm which you have for these talks. Your presence and participation and support have made this event truly remarkable. We look forward to creating more impactful evenings in the future. Thank you. Please have a wonderful evening and a very spirited evening now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lalitji. We have a couple of very quick things. We have the mementos to go.
Yeah.
But before that, Kevin just quickly wants to say something. We had an open mic scheduled. We don't have the time for it now, but Kevin is the king of the club mates, so he has to say something before we go.
Sure. So,
He's the?
what's that? Timer?
हाँ हाँ. Time शुरू होता है.
Okay.
First of all, it's been a brilliant evening, and I would like to thank all the speakers over here. In particularly, I would like to thank Mr. Goenka because he took a lot of load off my shoulder. For those of the speakers who do not know me, Sandeep of course knows me, but I am extremely politically correct. And therefore I would never speak the way you spoke at an event which has been called the GOAT. I would have wanted another animal, but that's on a lighter note. You know, there is thing called this chaos theory. And the chaos theory, in gist, it says that, you know, if a butterfly, for example, is fluttering its wings and is flapping its wings, and a few weeks later, it creates some kind of a movement in the air, and you could have a tornado on the other side of the world, perhaps. Few weeks ago, or a few months ago, somebody on the Clubmates group mentioned something to the effect of what does this got to do with that? And of course, I was talking about politics as a response to that. And I said that, of course, it has everything to do with, in fact, it has as much in politics as it is in business. And please look up. Let's call Mr. Dr. Sanjay Arora, where he said that the only reason why he's successful in business is because he used to open and close his shutters at a very young age. And I think Suresh had a keen eye, and he captured that, if you remember that. And I sent a message to Sanjay also that sometimes a very small event in your life in your earlier days makes a lot of difference, and that's what kind of catapults you to another level. And Suresh, you did mention that all these people are here. What's the common thread which is going through all these fantastic beats? And you mentioned that they are all running very huge companies. But I think I would like to capture that. The common thread is that they all come from a very, very humble background. You cannot be helicoptered from the top. You would not make a great leader, whether in business or in anywhere else, is what I wanted to put across. No politics over here, but just I thought I should highlight it.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. So anyways, one of the things what I also want to tell you, when we heard their stories of their humble beginnings, see, we all knew them as managing director, chairman, CEO, executive director, whatever have you. But understand one thing in life, friends, that when we look at all these titles, we can only respect them. But you know what happens is, when we listen to their stories, we get closer to them, and they get taller as well. So this is what I wanted to say, that the stories which we have heard is what is extremely inspiring, and that's what we must take home. I would like to also thank the committee led by Suresh, who has done this, and I think that biggest contributor to this is the club mates, we have so many such committees, and I would encourage all the guys over here to please have more and more ideas and come up with more and more of such kind of events. We have all sorts of events.
Next meeting has to be in Colonial with the entire house full.
Sure, absolutely. We had that, for example, the Bombay Debate Club over there at the Colonial Hall. And the reason why we are always struggling in the Bombay Debate Club, friends, which also started this way, is because we don't have enough people to participate as speakers. So please do participate in that.
Thank you, Kevin.
And
Thank
whatever
you.
it is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you guys, and including the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you
the
very
best.
much. Let's it's just a little bit of mementos.
Guys, last 30 seconds, we want to give small mementos to the panel. And I am also recognizing one unique feature amongst the audience. There is one father and daughter combo who both are from IIT Mumbai. Okay, I want them to come in and give the mementos to the panel. Bijal and daughter. And I'm a record keeper. IIT Mumbai has no precedence of a father-daughter from the same institute, apparently. I have to be fact-checked. Father-son, yes. Father-daughter. Bijal.
Okay, so I'm Bijal Modi. This is my daughter, Aneri Modi. So we both graduated from IIT Mumbai, Mechanical Engineering, same branch, same institute, 30 years apart.
The panel is requested once again to come up because Falguni has a. You start with KV, no? Yeah.
Hello, I have the books